Each night she massaged the Apache warrior until one touch stirred feelings she'd never known. Anna moved quietly through the small settlement as the sun began to set. The sky above the frontier was a mixture of soft orange and pale purple, the colors stretching across the plains like a painting. She had always loved this time of day, when the world seemed calm and everything slowed down. But tonight her heart was not calm. Tonight she had a responsibility that made her both nervous and determined. A few days ago, the men of the settlement had brought in a wounded Apache warrior. He had been captured during a skirmish not far from the settlement, and his injuries were severe. The other women had whispered among themselves, worried and frightened. Some even refused to go near him. But Anna had been chosen. She was known for her gentle hands and her knowledge of herbs and healing. She was the best hope the warrior had to survive. As she approached the small cabin where he was being kept, she could hear the faint sound of labored breathing. The door creaked as she opened it, and she stepped inside carefully. The room was dimly lit by a single lantern, its light flickering on the walls and casting soft shadows. In the corner, the warrior lay on a bed of blankets, his face turned slightly away from her. She had seen his face before in passing, but up close, it was even more striking. His features were strong and defined, his skin tanned from the sun, and his eyes, dark and deep, held a quiet intensity that made her catch her breath for a moment. She reminded herself to stay calm. This was not about fear or curiosity. This was about healing. She set down her basket of herbs and oils and began her work. First she cleaned the wounds carefully, speaking in a soft voice as she worked, hoping to soothe them with sound as well as touch. The warrior remained still, watching her with cautious eyes. There was a dignity in the way he held himself, even in pain. He said nothing, but she could feel that he understood that she meant no harm. Night after night Anna returned to the cabin. Each evening she would light the lantern, set out her herbs, and begin the careful process of cleaning and massaging his injuries. At first the warrior seemed wary, tense under her hands, but slowly, as the days passed, he began to relax. His breathing became more even, his muscles less stiff, and slowly she began to notice other things, small gestures, tiny expressions that hinted at a personality beyond the warrior she had been told to fear. She learned to move with care, watching his reactions as she worked. When she applied a poultice or rubbed a sore muscle, she paid attention to his subtle shifts, his slight nods or softening of the eyes. It was a delicate dance, a balance between tending to the wounds and respecting the space of someone who had known danger and hardship all his life. At the same time, Anna found herself thinking about him long after she left the cabin. She wondered what his life had been like before the skirmish, before he came to the settlement as a prisoner. She imagined the wide open spaces of the plains, the sun rising over the hills, the sounds of birds and wind, and the life he must have led with his people. Her heart ached with a strange mixture of admiration and sadness. She had never felt this way about anyone before. The warrior, whose name she had learned was Tyen, also began to show signs of noticing her in ways that went beyond the healer-patient relationship. A small look of gratitude when she tended a particularly painful wound, a quiet curiosity in his eyes when she hummed a soft tune while working, a subtle shift in his posture that suggested trust, slowly growing night by night. Anna felt it too, the silent connection that seemed to pass between them without words. One evening, as Anna prepared the herbs, she paused to watch him. He was lying on the blankets, the firelight dancing across his face, and for a moment he looked vulnerable in a way she had not seen before. She realized then that this was not just about healing a body. It was about understanding a person, reaching across the invisible walls that history and conflict had built between them. She felt a surge of purpose, a determination to see him not as an enemy, but as a human being deserving care and dignity. As she worked that night, carefully massaging a tense shoulder muscle, Tyen finally spoke, his voice low and rough. "It does not hurt," he said simply, and she smiled softly. It was the first word she had heard from him, and though simple, they carried weight. They acknowledged her skill, her care, and perhaps in some small way, her presence. Anna felt warmth spread through her chest at the sound. Days turned into a week, and with each passing night their routine continued. Anna brought new herbs, refined her techniques, and watched Taeyeon grow stronger. He moved more freely, and his eyes, once guarded and cautious, began to shine with life again. Their bond was growing silently but steadily in gestures, glances, and the quiet moments that passed between words. The other settlers began to notice the change as well. Whispers floated through the cabins and streets. Some admired her bravery, some worried for her safety, and others simply did not understand the quiet connection forming between the healer and the warrior. But Anna did not care about the gossip. She focused only on her work, on the rhythm of caring hands and the subtle language of trust and respect. One night, a storm rolled in. The wind howled outside, rattling the cabin walls, and rain lashed against the roof. Inside, the fire flickered, casting a warm glow on the blankets and walls. Anna worked diligently, massaging Taeyeon's arms and shoulders, keeping him calm as the thunder rumbled above. She felt a strange courage rising in her, a certainty that she was meant to be here, to offer comfort and healing no matter the danger or fear that surrounded them. Taeyeon looked at her in the dim light, and for a moment, Anna thought she saw something flicker in his eyes, an unspoken recognition, an understanding that went beyond words. She realized then that she felt something she had never felt before, a connection that stirred emotion she could not name. It was respect, yes, but it was more. It was curiosity, admiration, and a strange, compelling warmth that she had never experienced with anyone else. When the storm passed, Anna lingered a moment longer than usual. She sat by the lantern, watching Taeyeon rest, listening to the gentle sound of his breathing. For a long time she simply stayed there, feeling the weight of the moment, the quiet intimacy of shared space, and the fragile beginnings of a bond that neither of them had expected. As she left the cabin that night, her heart felt both heavy and light. She knew the journey ahead would be difficult, that their connection was delicate and complicated. But she also knew that something meaningful had begun, something that went beyond fear, beyond duty, and beyond the walls that history and circumstance had built between them. She would return the next night, and the night after, for as long as it took. Anna walked back through the quiet streets of the settlement, the cool night air brushing against her face. The stars above seemed brighter than usual, as if watching over the frontier and the small cabin where healing and understanding were quietly taking root. She felt a sense of hope, fragile but real, and she knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would challenge everything she had ever known about trust, courage, and the human heart. And somewhere, in the shadows of the cabin, Taeyeon lay awake for a few moments longer, thinking of the gentle hands that had eased his pain, of the soft voice that had soothed his fears, and of the quiet, extraordinary connection that was growing between them, one night at a time. Night after night, Anna continued her routine of caring for Taeyeon. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned soft shades of pink and purple, she would gather her herbs, oils, and cloths and make her way to the small cabin where he was recovering. Over the past week, she had noticed changes, not only in his wounds but also in his behavior. Taeyeon was no longer tense and wary. His eyes, once guarded and sharp, now held a quiet alertness, and the small gestures of gratitude he gave her were becoming more frequent. Anna prepared the cabin each night, carefully arranging the blankets and lighting the lantern. She had learned that routine brought a sense of calm to both of them. Taeyeon, sitting or lying on the blankets, would sometimes watch her work in silence, his dark eyes following her hands as she mixed herbs or applied a warm compress. She moved with care, mindful of his comfort, watching for the slightest sign that she might be causing him pain. At first, their conversations were minimal. Taeyeon rarely spoke, and Anna respected his silence. She spoke softly as she worked, telling him what she was doing, explaining how the herbs would help him, and occasionally humming a quiet tune to fill the stillness. At first, she thought he might not notice or care, but she soon realized that he listened intently. When she hummed, he would sometimes close his eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over him, and she found herself smiling quietly at the small signs of trust forming between them. One evening, as Anna applied a warm poultice to his shoulder, Taeyeon shifted slightly and said his first words in several days. "It feels good." His voice was rough, but the meaning was clear. Anna smiled gently, relieved that he was speaking. "I am glad," she replied softly. "You are healing. Your body is strong." Tyann nodded, and for a moment their eyes met. In that silent exchange, Anna felt something stir inside her, an awareness of the connection growing between them, subtle but undeniable. As the nights passed, their routine deepened. Anna discovered that Tyann was unusually patient, enduring discomfort without complaint and showing remarkable strength of spirit. She noticed the way his muscles would tense when she applied pressure, then relax slowly, as though he were learning to trust her hands. She found herself studying him, not just as a patient, but as a person. She wondered about his life before this place, before the war, and before he had become a prisoner in a settlement that feared and mistrusted him. Tyann, too, seemed to notice Anna in ways that went beyond the healer-patient relationship. He watched her with a quiet attentiveness, following her movements with his eyes and occasionally offering small gestures of acknowledgement. A slight nod, a soft exhale, or a brief glance that lingered longer than necessary. Anna felt a strange thrill each time their eyes met, a warmth that made her hands move more carefully and her heart beat faster. She reminded herself to focus on the work, to keep her feelings contained, but she could not deny the emotions growing within her. The nights were often quiet, broken only by the crackling of the fire or the occasional sound of wind rattling the cabin walls. On some evenings, Tyann began to share fragments of his life. His words were few and deliberate, but they painted vivid images of the wide plains, the morning sun rising over hills, the sound of rivers, and the songs of birds. Anna listened in silence, fascinated. She felt as if she were being given a glimpse into a world she had only imagined, a world full of beauty, strength, and challenges she could not fully comprehend. In turn, Anna shared small pieces of her life. She told him about her family, the long days of work in the settlement, and the herbs she had learned to use from her mother. Tyann listened with interest, occasionally asking a question or making a quiet observation. These exchanges were brief, yet they carried a weight far beyond the words themselves. They were learning about each other, not just as healer and patient, but as two people separated by culture and circumstance who were discovering shared humanity. One night, as Anna gently massaged his back, Tyann's hand brushed hers accidentally. The contact was brief, almost imperceptible, but it sent a shiver through her. She froze for a moment, aware of the unexpected intensity of the feeling. Tyann did not react, continuing to lie still, but Anna felt a quiet connection in that fleeting touch. She reminded herself that she was a healer, that her duty was to care for him, and yet she could not ignore the emotions that had begun to stir in her heart. As the days passed, Anna became increasingly aware of how much she looked forward to the evenings. The moments with Tyann had become the center of her day, a time when she could set aside fear and duty and simply be present with another human being. She began to notice his humor, subtle but present, in the way he would shift slightly or make a small comment under his breath. She began to sense his intelligence and thoughtfulness, in the way he responded to her care, in the silent gratitude he conveyed with his eyes. The other settlers began to notice changes as well. Some admired Anna's bravery, whispering about how skillfully she cared for the warrior. Others were suspicious, questioning why she spent so much time with someone they still considered an enemy. Anna heard the murmurs but paid little attention. Her focus was on the cabin, on the quiet space where healing and understanding were taking place. She knew that the connection she was forming with Tyann was delicate and precious, something that required patience, respect, and care. One particularly cold night, the wind howled across the plains, rattling the cabin door and sending gusts of chill through the room. Anna worked carefully, massaging his legs and arms to ease tension and promote circulation. Tyann shivered slightly but did not complain. He looked at her with a steady gaze, and she felt a moment of mutual recognition, an acknowledgement that they were enduring hardship together, supporting each other in the only way they could. The fire crackled softly, casting warm light across the blankets and illuminating the growing bond between them. Over time, the routine itself became a kind of language. Each movement, each gesture, each careful touch carried meaning. Tyann learned to relax under Anna's hands, trusting her expertise and her presence. Anna, in turn, learned to read his subtle cues, understanding when to apply more pressure, when to pause, and when to offer words of comfort. In this shared rhythm, a quiet intimacy developed, a connection that transcended words and rested in trust, care, and mutual respect. Anna also noticed that her own feelings were changing. She no longer thought of Tyan only as a wounded warrior or a prisoner. She began to see him as a person with dreams, memories, and emotions. She admired his courage, his dignity, and the quiet strength that radiated from him even in moments of pain. She felt a mixture of emotions, admiration, curiosity, and something deeper that she could not yet name. It was a feeling that made her heart race, her hands linger a fraction longer on his muscles, and her thoughts return to him long after she had left the cabin. Tyan, in turn, began to respond in small but meaningful ways. He would shift his position to make it easier for her to work, follow her instructions carefully, and occasionally offer a soft word of acknowledgement. Anna began to sense that he, too, felt the growing bond between them. Though he was careful not to reveal too much, there was a quiet understanding, an unspoken connection that neither needed to define with words but that both recognized in gestures, glances, and the shared silence of the nights. One evening, as Anna finished her work and prepared to leave, Tyan spoke again. His voice was soft but clear. "You care, more than I expected." Anna paused, touched by the simple honesty in his words. "I care because it is right," she replied, keeping her voice steady, though her heart felt full. "You are hurt, and I will help you heal." Tyan's eyes met hers, and in that gaze, a depth of emotion passed between them that words could not capture. As Anna stepped out into the cool night air, she felt a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and quiet excitement. The bond she was forming with Tyan was growing stronger each day, and though she did not yet fully understand the emotions stirring within her, she welcomed them. She knew that the journey ahead would be complicated, filled with challenges and uncertainties. But she also knew that the connection she had begun to build was something rare and meaningful, worth nurturing with patience, care, and respect. Walking back to her own small cabin, Anna looked up at the stars twinkling in the clear night sky. She thought of Tyan, of the quiet strength in his eyes, and of the moments they had shared in the dim light of the cabin. She felt hope, fragile but real, that through trust, understanding, and compassion, something beautiful could grow, even in the midst of fear, conflict, and uncertainty. And somewhere, in the quiet darkness of the cabin, Tyan lay awake for a while longer, thinking of the gentle hands that had eased his pain, the soft voice that had comforted him, and the quiet, extraordinary connection that was blossoming between them, night by night, touch by touch, in ways neither had fully anticipated but both deeply felt. The nights grew quieter as Tyan's strength slowly returned. His wounds were healing well, and he could now sit up for longer periods without pain. Anna noticed the change immediately. His posture was straighter, his breathing calmer, and there was a steady light in his eyes that had not been there before. Each evening when she entered the cabin, she felt a familiar sense of calm settle over her, as if this small space had become a world of its own, separate from fear and judgment. One night, Anna brought a small bowl of warm water and fresh cloths. She set them beside the lantern and began her work as usual. Tyan watched her with quiet attention. There was no tension in his body now, only patience. As she gently worked on his arm, he spoke, his voice steady. "In my home," he said, "the nights sound different." Anna paused for a moment, surprised by the way his words opened a door she had not expected. "Different how?" she asked softly.
He thought for a moment. "There is more wind," he said, "more open space. You hear animals moving far away."
"The land speaks." Anna listened carefully, her hands moving slowly as she cleaned a healing mark on his skin. She tried to imagine such a place, wide open, alive with sound and meaning. "It sounds beautiful," she said. Taya nodded. That night, something changed. The quiet between them was no longer just silence. It became a space where stories could live. Tyan began to speak more often, sharing memories in small pieces, never rushing, never offering more than he was ready to give. He told her about his childhood, running across open land with other children, learning to listen to the world around him. He spoke of elders who taught patience, respect, and strength, not just of the body, but of the spirit. Anna listened, fully present. She did not interrupt or ask too many questions. She simply listened, letting his words settle in her heart. Each story painted a picture she had never seen before, one that challenged the ideas she had grown up with. She realized how little she truly knew about his people, and how much she wanted to understand. In return, Anna shared parts of her own life. She spoke of her mother, who had taught her how to gather herbs and care for the sick. She spoke of long days in the settlement, helping where she could, and of nights when she felt lonely, even among people she had known all her life. Tayan listened closely, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes he nodded, sometimes he simply held her gaze, letting her know he heard her. Their conversations were never long, but they were honest. They spoke slowly, carefully choosing their words, aware that each story carried weight. Through these shared moments, trust deepened. Anna felt it in the way Tayan relaxed completely when she worked, no longer watching her hands, no longer guarding himself. Tayan felt it in the way Anna spoke to him, not as a prisoner, not as an enemy, but as a person whose life mattered. One evening, Anna noticed Tayan studying her more closely than usual. "What is it?" she asked gently. "You listen," he said. "Many do not." Anna smiled softly. "Everyone has a story," she replied.
I think we should listen to them.
Tayan considered her words. "That is a strong belief," he said. Anna shrugged lightly. "It's the only way I know how to heal." As the days passed, Tayan began to move more freely. He could stand for short moments and walk slowly across the cabin. Anna watched with quiet pride as he regained his strength. But with his healing came a new awareness. The time they spent together was changing. Soon he would not need her care in the same way. But thought stirred a strange sadness in Anna's chest. She tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on the present. Each night became more meaningful, as if both of them sensed that this chapter would not last forever. Their conversations grew deeper. Tayan spoke of responsibility, of protecting his people, and of the weight that came with being a warrior. Anna spoke of choice, of wondering whether her life would always remain the same, or if there was something more waiting beyond the settlement. One night as the fire burned low, Tayan asked a question that surprised her.
Are you afraid of me? Anna stopped what she was doing and looked at him. She considered the question carefully.
"I was," she admitted, "at first. And now?" She met his gaze, honest and calm. "Now I am not." Tayan seemed to accept this without surprise. "Fear grows from not knowing," he said.
When we learn, it fades.
Anna nodded. His words stayed with her long after she left the cabin that night.
The settlement outside continued its routines, unaware of the quiet understanding growing within those four walls. There were still whispers, still looks of doubt, but Anna paid them little mind. What mattered was the truth she had come to know. Tayan was not the image she had been taught to fear. He was thoughtful, kind in his own reserved way, and deeply connected to the world around him. Tayan, too, was changing. He began to see the settlement not only as a place of capture, but as a place where compassion existed, where one person had chosen care over fear. Anna's presence challenged his own expectations, reminding him that humanity could be found even in unlikely places. One evening, rain fell softly against the roof, creating a steady rhythm that filled the cabin. Anna finished her work and sat quietly for a moment, unsure why she did not want to leave just yet. Tayan noticed. "You are tired?" he said.
A little, she replied. But it's a good kind of tired. They sat in silence, listening to the rain.
There was no need to speak. The connection between them was strong enough to exist without words. Anna felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling of belonging she had never known before. It frightened her, but it also gave her strength. Before she left, Tayan spoke again. "Whatever happens," he said, "I will remember this." Anna's heart tightened. So will I. As she walked back through the settlement, the night air cool on her skin, Anna realized that her world had shifted. She was no longer the same woman who had first entered that cabin with fear and uncertainty. She had grown, learned, and opened her heart in ways she had never expected. And in the quiet of the cabin, Tyan sat alone, thinking of shared stories, gentle care, and the rare peace he had found in the presence of someone who saw him not for who others said he was, but for who he truly was. He did not know what the future would bring, but he knew one thing for certain: the bond they had formed was real, and it had changed them both forever. The nights had grown longer, cooler, and quieter as winter slowly approached. In the small cabin, the light of the lantern flickered gently, casting warm shadows across the blankets and walls. Anna moved softly, carefully arranging the herbs and cloths for her evening work. Tyan sat upright, his body stronger now, his wounds almost entirely healed. Yet something unspoken had shifted between them. As Anna began to massage his shoulders, she noticed the way Tyan's muscles relaxed under her hands. The trust between them was no longer cautious. It was complete. She could feel it in the way he leaned slightly into her touch, the way his breathing slowed, and even in the faint expression that softened his usually serious face. Every night their routine was the same, yet it felt different now. There was a quiet intimacy in their shared space, one that neither of them had named but both understood. Anna tried to focus on her work, reminding herself of her duty. She was a healer, and her role was to tend to Tyan's wounds, to restore his strength. But as her hands moved over his shoulders, arms, and back, she became increasingly aware of a warmth she had never felt before. It was not just concern or responsibility. It was something deeper, a pull she could not explain. Her heart beat a little faster, and her movements lingered slightly longer, careful but intentional. Tyan seemed to notice this subtle shift as well. He remained quiet, his eyes fixed on the flickering fire, but there was a new softness in his gaze when he looked at her. A slight tension in his body melted away, replaced by something tender. Neither of them spoke of it, for words felt inadequate, yet both were conscious of the change. Each touch, each glance, carried meaning that went beyond the healing itself. One evening as Anna worked, Tyan spoke softly.
I did not expect this. Anna paused, her hands stilling for a moment. Expect what? She asked gently.
This connection, he said, his voice low. I thought I would be alone in pain. I thought I would face this world as a stranger with no one to care. And yet, you are here. You care. Anna felt a warmth spread through her chest. I care because it is right, she replied, keeping her voice calm, though her heart fluttered. Not because it is easy, not because it is expected. I care because I see you. Not the warrior others fear, not the enemy they speak of. Just you. For a long moment, they sat in silence, the quiet crackle of the fire filling the space between them. Anna resumed her work slowly, massaging his back with gentle, deliberate movements. Tyan's breathing deepened, his body fully trusting hers. And in that silence, an understanding passed between them, a recognition that the bond they shared had grown into something neither could ignore. The next few nights brought a subtle tension that neither Anna nor Tyan could name. It was not discomfort nor fear, but a heightened awareness of each other's presence. Anna found herself watching him more carefully, noticing the small lines of thought on his face, the way his hands rested when he relaxed, the quiet strength in his posture. She felt an ache of admiration and something more tender, something that made her wonder if her heart had been caught unawares. Tyan, too, felt the shift. He noticed the way Anna's fingers lingered just a fraction longer on a sore muscle, the way her eyes met his with gentle concern, the way she hummed softly as she worked. He could not deny the pull he felt toward her, not only gratitude for her care, but a deep, compelling desire to understand her, to be near her, to share more than words could ever express. One night as a cold wind rattled the cabin door, Anna paused mid-massage, her hand resting lightly on Tyan's arm. He turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze. In that instant she felt something stir inside her, a surge of emotion she could no longer ignore. It was a mixture of awe, curiosity, and an unfamiliar tenderness that took her breath away. She realized that she cared for him in a way she had never cared for anyone before. Tayan's eyes held hers, steady and thoughtful. He did not speak, but the depth of his gaze mirrored her own feelings. He, too, had been aware of the change, the quiet emotional shift that had grown between them over weeks of care and conversation. The realization was both exhilarating and frightening. They were drawn to each other, yet circumstances, duty, and the world outside the cabin created invisible walls. Anna swallowed hard, forcing herself to return to her work. "Almost done," she whispered softly. She finished massaging his shoulders, applying a soothing herbal salve, and tucked the blankets around him. Tayan let out a quiet sigh, a sound of relief and contentment. "You are very skilled," he said quietly, his voice carrying a depth of sincerity. "And you are very brave," she replied. "Bravery shows in many ways, not just in battle, but in enduring, in trusting, in surviving." Tayan's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, one that reached his eyes. Anna's heart quickened. She realized that even small moments, words, glances, touches, had taken on new meaning. They were no longer simply healer and patient. They were two people learning to see each other fully, recognizing the humanity and strength that lay beneath the surface. The nights that followed were filled with quiet awareness. Anna noticed herself anticipating the evenings, eager for the time spent in Tayan's company. She would linger slightly longer than necessary, finding reasons to be near him, to observe the subtle shifts in his mood and expressions. She took note of the way he trusted her hands, the way he allowed himself to relax in ways that were impossible in the outside world. Tayan, in turn, found himself drawn to Anna's calm presence. He thought often of her warmth, her patience, and her unwavering care. He had lived a life filled with discipline, duty, and caution, but these quiet evenings offered something he had rarely experienced: the freedom to simply be, to let another person see him without fear or judgment. One night, as Anna cleaned and prepared a warm compress, Tayan reached out slowly, placing a hand lightly over hers. The contact was brief, almost imperceptible, yet it sent a jolt through her. She paused, heart racing, and looked up at him. Tayan's gaze was steady, thoughtful, and filled with a quiet understanding. "Thank you," he said simply. Anna swallowed, feeling a mixture of surprise and warmth. "You do not need to thank me," she replied softly. "It is what I am here to do." And yet, in that fleeting touch, both of them acknowledged the emotions they had been too careful to name. They were aware now, in the quiet and solitude of the cabin, that their bond had grown into something deeper than trust, deeper than friendship, something that stirred in the heart and mind, gentle yet undeniable. The realization brought with it both joy and apprehension. Anna feared the complexity of her emotions, the impossibility of the situation outside the cabin walls. Tayan understood the limitations as well, the expectations of duty, the realities of his world, but neither could ignore what had begun to grow between them. Each night, their glances, their words, and their touches became more meaningful, carrying a depth of feeling neither had spoken aloud. One evening after finishing her work, Anna sat by the fire for a moment longer than usual. Tayan watched her quietly, sensing the thoughts stirring in her mind. "You are thinking," he said softly. "I am," she admitted. "I am thinking of what this means, of what we have come to share." Tayan nodded slowly. "We cannot speak of it outside," he said. "But here, it exists, and it is real." She realized that they did not need to define everything now. They could simply acknowledge the bond growing between them, nurturing it through presence, care, and understanding. The world outside might not understand, but within these walls, they had found something rare and precious. As she prepared to leave, Anna glanced at him one last time. "Tomorrow night," she said softly, "I will return, and we will continue." Tayan nodded, a faint but sincere smile on his lips. "I will be here." Walking back to her cabin through the cold, quiet night, Anna felt a mix of fear and excitement. She understood that her emotions were deepening, that her connection with Tyan was no longer simple. Yet she also felt hope, a fragile, shining hope that trust, care, and quiet understanding could create a bond that transcended fear, duty, and circumstance. And in the cabin, Tyan sat for a long while after she left, thinking of her hands, her voice, and the quiet courage that had touched him in ways no one else ever had. He realized that what had begun as healing had grown into something far more profound, a recognition of connection, respect, and emotions neither had expected, but both deeply felt. The nights were long, but Anna no longer felt alone. Each evening, she walked to the cabin with a sense of purpose, carrying her herbs, cloths, and the quiet hope that had grown in her heart. Tyan was there, waiting as always, a calm presence in the flickering light of the lantern. Their routine had settled into a rhythm that was both comforting and profound. They no longer needed words for every thought. Gestures, glances, and the gentle touch of hands spoke volumes. On this particular evening, the air was cold and crisp, and the wind whispered across the plains outside. Anna set down her basket and knelt beside Tyan, who was sitting up on the blankets, his posture relaxed but strong. As she began to massage his shoulders, she noticed how easily he moved now, how strong he had become. The healing was complete, yet something had shifted beyond the physical. They had built a connection that neither time nor circumstance could erase. "You move easily now," Anna said softly, smiling. Tyan's lips curved in a small smile. "Because of you," he replied, his voice calm but filled with sincerity. "You have made me stronger than I thought possible." Anna's heart warmed at his words. "You were already strong," she said. "I only helped you see it." There was a quiet pause, as if both were savoring the moment. Then Tyan leaned slightly closer, his gaze meeting hers. Anna felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of awe, tenderness, and an unspoken understanding. Neither of them spoke immediately. Words were unnecessary. The connection between them was stronger than any conversation. It existed in the space between heartbeats, in the brush of hands, and the meeting of eyes. Night after night, they shared small gestures that spoke louder than words. Tyan would shift slightly to make her work easier, and Anna would linger a moment longer, feeling the warmth of his presence. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. The cabin had become a sanctuary, a place where two people could be themselves, free from fear, judgment, or expectation. As the weeks passed, their bond deepened. Anna realized that she no longer saw Tyan as a patient or as someone she needed to care for out of duty. He was someone she admired, respected, and cherished. Her feelings had grown into something tender and profound, a sense of closeness that filled her heart and mind. She could not name it fully, but she knew it was love in its quiet, careful form, gentle, patient, and unwavering. Tyan, too, had begun to recognize his own emotions. He had lived a life of discipline and caution, but Anna had shown him a world of care, trust, and connection. He felt a warmth in her presence, a sense of peace and belonging that he had never known. The bond they shared was no longer just about healing. It was about seeing each other fully, recognizing strength and vulnerability, and feeling safe in a way that was rare and precious. One evening, as Anna massaged his back, Tyan spoke quietly. "Do you think this can last?" Anna paused, her hands resting lightly on his shoulders. "I do not know what the future holds," she said softly, "but I know what exists now. And what exists now is real." Tyan nodded slowly, a calm understanding in his eyes. "Then we will honor it," he said. They sat together in silence, listening to the wind outside and the soft crackle of the fire. There was no need for grand declarations. They understood each other in ways words could not capture. The bond they had formed was steady and true, built on trust, care, and shared moments that had grown over time. In the days that followed, their connection became evident in small but meaningful ways. Tyan would adjust his position to ease her movements, offering subtle gestures of thoughtfulness. Anna would pause in her work to meet his eyes, sharing a quiet smile that carried the weight of everything unspoken between them. Each glance, each touch, each small exchange strengthened the bond, creating a rhythm of understanding and affection that required no explanation. The settlement continued its routines outside, unaware of the quiet transformation within the cabin. There were still whispers and glances from others, but Anna and Tyan paid little attention. What mattered was the space they had created together, a world of care, respect, and emotional intimacy that belonged only to them. One night, after finishing her work, Anna sat by the fire for a moment longer than usual. Tyan watched her quietly, sensing the thoughts stirring in her mind. She looked at him and spoke softly. "I have never felt this way before." Tyan's gaze met hers, steady and full of understanding.
Nor have I,
he said simply. Anna's heart warmed. "It is strange and wonderful and frightening all at once," she admitted. Tyan nodded. "It is life," he said. "It is truth, and it is ours, in this place, in this moment." The words hung in the air, but they needed no further explanation. Both understood that their connection was real and meaningful. It was not bound by duty or circumstance. It existed in the quiet, patient moments, in the shared trust, and in the unspoken understanding that had grown between them. The nights continued, each one a continuation of the bond they had nurtured. They shared stories of the past, hopes for the future, and reflections on the present. They laughed quietly at small jokes, and sometimes they simply sat in silence, content with the presence of the other. The cabin became a place of sanctuary, a world where two hearts could meet without fear, judgment, or expectation. Anna noticed that her feelings had grown stronger. She admired Tyan's courage, respected his wisdom, and cherished the gentle ways he expressed care. She found herself thinking of him long after she left the cabin, wondering how he fared through the night, and anticipating the next evening when she could be near him again. Tyan, too, felt a deepening sense of connection. He realized that Anna's presence had become a source of strength and comfort. She had taught him trust, shown him patience, and revealed the possibility of emotional closeness in a world that often demanded distance and caution. He felt gratitude, admiration, and a quiet, growing affection that filled the spaces in his heart that had long been untouched. One evening, as the firelight flickered across the blankets, Anna paused in her work and looked at Tyan. "We have shared much," she said softly. "And yet I feel there is more I want to know about you." Tyan smiled faintly, the corner of his lips lifting in a rare expression.
"And I about you?" he replied.
"We have learned much in silence, but there are still words left to share." The night stretched on as they continued to talk, sharing memories, hopes, and reflections. Each story deepened the understanding between them, revealing not just experiences, but values, dreams, and quiet truths. The connection that had begun with healing had grown into something enduring and meaningful, a bond of respect, care, and tender affection. As Anna prepared to leave that night, she looked at Tyan and felt a deep sense of gratitude and love. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we will continue, together."
Tyan nodded, his gaze steady and full of warmth. "Together," he echoed.
Walking back to her cabin, Anna felt a sense of peace she had never known. The bond she shared with Tyan was a quiet force, steady and unwavering. It was built on trust, care, understanding, and shared moments that would remain in their hearts forever. She knew the path ahead might be uncertain, but the connection they had formed was strong enough to withstand fear, doubt, and the challenges of the world outside. And in the quiet of the cabin, Tyan sat for a long while, reflecting on the gentle hands, the kind voice, and the presence that had touched him in ways no one else ever had. He understood that what had begun with healing had grown into something extraordinary, a recognition of humanity, an emotional bond, and a quiet love that needed no words to be real. The story of their evenings, the care, the trust, and the gentle connection, was not marked by grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was marked by patience, understanding, and the steady realization that two hearts could find each other even in the most unlikely circumstances. In the warmth of the lantern light, with the wind whispering outside and the world continuing beyond the cabin, Anna and Tan had found something rare, a quiet, enduring connection that would remain in their hearts, no matter what the future held. And so, night after night, they continued. One touch, one glance, one shared story at a time, until the quiet bond between them became a force stronger than fear, stronger than circumstance, and stronger than any expectation. In each other's presence, they discovered not only healing of the body, but of the heart and soul, leaving them forever changed by the power of trust, care, and the gentle courage to feel.